Good evening, and welcome to WorldInfoBoss, where knowledge is power. Tonight, the Middle East is facing one of its most dangerous moments in months, as Israel and Iran have traded missile fire. Lebanon remains under intense pressure. Gaza's humanitarian situation is again at the center of international concern, and the Red Sea is once more becoming a flashpoint for global shipping. According to reporting from NPR, Israel and Iran both said on June 8 that they would stop attacking each other for now, after a direct exchange of missile fire that sharply raised fears of a wider regional war. But this pause is fragile. Both sides have attached conditions to their statements, and several connected fronts, from Lebanon and Gaza to Yemen and the Gulf, remain unstable. Tonight, we break down what happened, why it matters, and what the world should watch next. The latest escalation began with Iran launching missile attacks toward Israel, followed by Israeli strikes inside Iran. NPR reports that Iran launched nearly 30 ballistic missiles at Israel, according to the Israeli military, and that Israeli forces said the incoming fire was intercepted. Falling debris reportedly sparked brush fires, but NPR's account said there were no reported injuries or major damage from that specific barrage. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu later said Israel's fire against Iran was on hold, while warning that Israel would respond with force if Iran resumed attacks. Iran, for its part, said it was halting further attacks for now, while warning that continued Israeli action in Lebanon could trigger a stronger response. This matters because the confrontation is not isolated. Israel said its strikes inside Iran targeted military air defense systems, while Iranian media reported explosions in Tehran, Isfahan, and Tabriz, and airport shutdowns during the escalation. France 24 also reported that Israel effectively shut down amid the war flare-up, as the exchange raised fears among ordinary Israelis of a return to full-scale conflict. The United States has played a direct diplomatic role. President Donald Trump publicly urged both Israel and Iran to stop shooting, saying the two sides were looking at an immediate ceasefire. That message appears to have helped slow the exchange, but it did not resolve the deeper conflict. One of the most important drivers behind the latest escalation is Lebanon. Iran cited Israel's operations against Hezbollah as a reason for its missile barrage, and Israeli officials have said military operations against Hezbollah would continue. The Armed Conflict Location and Event Data Project, known as Escalates, reports that Israel-Hezbollah fighting intensified in May, with attacks by Hezbollah and Israeli military forces in Lebanon increasing by 10% compared with the previous month. Escalates also reports that Hezbollah carried out more than 260 drone, rocket, and anti-tank missile attacks in May, the highest monthly total since the war resumed in March. At the same time, Israel has expanded its operations in southern Lebanon. Escalates says Israeli forces pushed north of the Litani River, while Israeli airstrikes intensified in areas including the Nabatee district. The result is a conflict that remains formally surrounded by ceasefire language but is still producing daily insecurity on the ground. The humanitarian picture is severe. The World Health Organization, through Relief Web, reported that Lebanon's security situation remained highly unstable in late May and early June, with hostilities concentrated in the south and periodic strikes affecting areas near Beirut. WHO also reported that, since March 2, Lebanon's Ministry of Public Health recorded 14,259 casualties, including 3,526 deaths and 10,733 injuries, as of June 4. For viewers, the key point is this: even if Israel and Iran pause direct attacks, the Lebanon front can still reignite a wider regional crisis. Gaza is another central piece of this regional picture. Escalates reports that in May, Israel increased pressure on Hamas in Gaza, recording more than 40 Israeli attacks on Hamas and allied groups, the highest monthly total since the ceasefire took effect in October 2025. Escalates also reports that Israeli control in Gaza increased from 53% since the ceasefire to around 60%, according to Israeli official reports, while Prime Minister Netanyahu stated an intent to expand control further. These developments increase pressure on Gaza's civilian population, especially where access to services and humanitarian operations is restricted. The United Nations Secretary-General expressed deep concern over Israel's decision to close crossings into Gaza and called for the immediate reopening of all crossings to allow rapid, safe, and unhindered humanitarian assistance at scale. The UN statement also urged all parties to abide by ceasefires in Lebanon, Iran, and Gaza, and to avoid actions that could undermine diplomacy. This is why humanitarian access is not a side issue. In a regional war environment, crossings, aid routes, medical supplies, and civilian protections can determine whether the crisis stabilizes or worsens. The conflict is also spreading through maritime routes that affect the global economy. NPR reports that the Iran-backed Houthi movement in Yemen said it fired missiles at Israel, prompting sirens in the Tel Aviv area, although there were no reports of those missiles hitting targets in that account. The Houthis also said they would prevent Israeli-linked ships from sailing in the Red Sea. This is a critical development because the Red Sea is one of the world's most important shipping corridors, connecting Asia, the Middle East, Europe, and global energy markets. Escalates reports that Iran and Iraq-based proxies attacked Gulf countries in maritime shipping in May, while the United States enforced maritime restrictions on ships entering and exiting Iranian ports. Escalates also reported that attacks targeted Gulf states including the United Arab Emirates, Kuwait, and Saudi Arabia, with many attacks intercepted but the risk to energy infrastructure still significant. Who reported that on June 3, strikes on Kuwait airport, residential areas, and civilian and diplomatic facilities resulted in 1 death and 63 injuries, while debris struck the UN house that hosts the WHO office, with no casualties reported there. Taken together, these events show that the war is not only being fought through missiles and airstrikes. It is also being fought through pressure on ports, shipping lanes, energy routes, and international diplomacy. The diplomatic question is whether pressure from Washington, the United Nations, and regional governments can keep this crisis contained. President Trump has said he wants the shooting to stop, and NPR reports that he has claimed a deal with Iran has been within reach, even as the ceasefire remained fragile. The United Nations Secretary-General was direct in his warning. He said he was deeply alarmed by renewed escalation and called on all parties to stop attacks, exercise maximum restraint, and avoid actions that could further inflame the situation. There is no military solution to the conflicts in the Middle East. The only way forward is through dialogue and negotiations. United Nations Secretary-General Statement, June 8, 2026. That statement captures the central problem. Each side says it is acting defensively, but every new strike creates pressure for another response. Israel says it will continue to defend itself and target threats. Iran says further Israeli action in Lebanon could trigger stronger retaliation. Hezbollah remains active in Lebanon. The Houthis are threatening shipping and launching missiles. Gaza remains under pressure. And the Gulf remains vulnerable to escalation around ports, energy infrastructure, and military bases. The result is a system where one miscalculation could trigger a chain reaction across multiple fronts. In the coming days, there are 5 major indicators to watch. First, watch whether Israel and Iran maintain their pause in direct attacks. A single missile barrage or airstrike could reverse the current de-escalation. Second, watch southern Lebanon. If Israeli operations intensify or Hezbollah expands attacks into northern Israel, the Lebanon front could become the main trigger for renewed regional escalation. Third, watch Gaza's crossings. If humanitarian access remains restricted, international pressure will likely increase, and the civilian crisis could worsen. Fourth, watch the Red Sea and Gulf shipping lanes. Any confirmed strike on a major commercial vessel, port, or energy facility could bring broader international involvement. And fifth, watch diplomacy. If talks between Washington, Tehran, Israel, Lebanon, and regional partners gain traction, the conflict may remain contained. If diplomacy stalls, the region could move closer to another major escalation. For now, the Middle East is not at peace. It is in a fragile pause, with multiple fronts still active and millions of civilians facing uncertainty. The most important question is whether leaders choose restraint or whether the next strike pushes the region into a wider war. This has been WorldInfoBoss. Thank you for watching. Stay informed, stay alert, and remember, knowledge is power. If you found this report useful, subscribe to WorldInfoBoss for more local news, world news, and deeper context on the stories shaping our world.